Right.
Okay, so we're
Oops.
rolling. So let's start with your name for the record.
Okay, my name is Embert Charles, spelled EMBERT CHARLES,
Okay,
and
and
I'm
you
speaking in my capacity as a former member of the board of directors of Radio St Lucia and former employee.
of Radio St Lucia. Okay, great. So, but we saw the conditions of the archives recently, the Radio St Lucia archives, since the station was closed in 2017. First of all, give me your views on the archives and the value that these archives have to us as a country.
Well, Shane, I think we ought to realize that a significant portion of our social, cultural, and political history is really captured in the recordings of the public radio station, Radio St. Lucia, like most of the public radio stations around the world. BBC, for instance, has an extensive records in Reading, which really captures the history of the UK and the UK's relationship with countries around the world. So in terms of our history, there are certain things that you couldn't find anywhere else but at Radio St. Lucia. And as we're celebrating our 42nd anniversary of independence, a lot of the events that were held were recorded only by Radio St. Lucia at the time. And these are perhaps, lost beneath a pile of garbage at the radio station, largely due to policies which did not pay respect and tribute to our patrimony. And I think it's a bit of a shame that any country would allow its records and its history to be treated in that way.
Okay.
We
What
have, for
is
instance,
Sorry, go ahead.
there are other public systems such as CBC Canada, even the USA, which is the bastion of free enterprise, prides its records. And you have stations like PBS, plus you have a number of public archives which protect and adds a serious, tremendous value to its records.
Okay. What are some of the material that is currently in the archives from what you know as a former member of staff of Radio St. Lucia? If we were to go in there and start to go through these archives, play them, what is some of the material that we would find?
Yeah, well, essentially, as you probably would have seen some of the images that have been going around, and it's almost like an archaeological site. So you will really have to do an archaeological dig to find some of the stuff that is beneath that pile. You would find a lot of the recordings of important speeches from former prime ministers, the former chief minister, George F.L. Charles. You'd have a lot of recordings of speeches and programs done by the Government Information Service, where they have presented the policies of government over that vast period of time. There are also very significant holdings of our cultural history. At one time, Radio St. Lucia was the only station that went out and recorded the Calypso competitions. And in fact, some Calypsonians went up there to record their songs. And that is the only place you could have found them. There are interviews with people like Alva Clark, who was one of the pioneers, like Winville King, who did a series of programs. I mean, I'm talking about these from my own personal recollections, and I am aware as well that some of the work that was being done up to just a few months before the radio station was closed was to try to transfer that stuff to a digital format. But sadly, you can't continue that work if the station has been shut down.
Right. And how far back do those archives go from what you know?
Oh, from what I know, these archives precede statehood. And the period between statehood and independence was between 1967 and 1979. I was a reporter at Radio St. Lucia following from school in 1974. And, that is when the station was established as the St. Lucia Broadcasting Corporation. Prior to that, it was one of the satellite stations of the Windward Islands Broadcasting Service, WIBS, which had its headquarters in Grenada, and you had the accompanying stations in all the other Windward Islands. So that is way back. You're talking about perhaps recordings of events that happened early 60s, late 50s. I'm sure you would find interviews with people who were part of the West Indies Federation and stuff like that. But on the other side, as I was saying, the recordings of a lot of our cultural past there as well. Very early in the 1990s, Joyce Ogies introduced a very pioneering program, radio education music program for schools, and it was broadcast on Radio St Lucia. And this was where I think Joyce Ogies, in addition to being the conduit for presenting a lot of our folk musicians to the public, was also doing something that hadn't been done anywhere else in terms of using our folk music, using what we know to teach young children to appreciate both the culture and to become skilled at music as well.
Okay. All right. So it seems that as it stands, I mean, just looking at the video and the condition that these tapes are in, we have a major crisis on our hands. If we have to solve this, what is the most immediate thing that we could do? What do we need to do right now to protect those archives and to save them for posterity?
Clearly, the most immediate task is to get the material out of the location where we start now. The most immediate task is to really get these tapes out of the location it is, because most of them are exposed to the elements, and to attempt to try to prepare some sort of program where you salvage, you sort of separate what is good and try as best as possible at what is good that you could transfer it onto a format that it can be preserved. It can be firstly conserved and then later preserved, later conserved. So you're looking at, as I said, finding a location, removing them from there, working with people who are familiar with the technology, and unfortunately there are very few of them around in St. Lucia right now. You have probably a couple of former employees of Radio St. Lucia who are also familiar with the technology but familiar with the material.
Right.
Sadly, we had somebody like Harold Judge Jr., who I think, Lord bless his soul, who would have been one of the best persons to do that.
That's right.
But he has started working on it before his passing. So I think that it has to be a national effort. It has to be an effort that is endorsed at the highest level, with the deep appreciation for our culture and our history. And it's everybody has to play a part in in preserving the patrimony and ensuring that we can salvage something. Because it's often said that someone who doesn't understand their history are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past.
Right.
And you would be surprised, a lot of the lessons of social and political history are captured in some of these recordings, which are somewhere beneath the pile at Radio St. Lucia.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much, Embert. A lot of information there coming about those archives and even about Radio St. Lucia itself. Thank you.
Yeah,
much appreciated.
And as I told you earlier, it was just I was invited to just join a team to just have a look at the archives and to see what can be done. Okay. I mean, we knew what ought to be done, but it's even more urgent now.
Right. Okay. I will do a follow-up in terms of the National Trust and the Coalition of Heritage Groups. At some time. So possibly next week I will do a follow-up. I just wanted to do something immediate on what I saw there and what the value that is there and what we're about to lose. But in terms of how do we preserve it and who's making the move to preserve it, I'll do a follow-up on that next week. Yeah?
Okay, excellent.
Thank you so much. All right. Take care, bud.
Take care. All right. Yeah, tell Colin I'll send him a picture.
All right, he can hear you. So,
I have video, Mr. Charles. I have
to,
video.
to see how it's done. When he reaches my age.
I have video.
all right.
You have video,
Take
right,
care.
Tony? Take
Yeah.
care. All right, bye.